All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Zach Stein. I'm the head of special collections and assistant professor at Edith Garland Dupre Library. We're here this evening to commemorate a piece of Acadiana and cinematic history, the 1986 classic Belizaire the Cajun. Written and directed by Glen Pitre, who's with us right here. This film is a milestone in Cajun cinema, chronicling the exploits of a Cajun Pitre in southwest Louisiana before the Civil War. The film presents a period and a group of individuals that were at the time not regularly seen by a national audience. While the period was fraught with tension, with Anglo settlers trying to force the descendants of banished Acadians from their land, it was also a period of cultural joy and triumph. Famed film critic Roger Ebert described the film as having personality, quiet charm, and a lot of affection, while presenting an unforced view of Cajun life. In his essay, Cajuns in Film, Dr. Barry Onsley noted how the story was not about a visitor among Cajuns, nor so much about Cajuns. It is rather set among the Cajun, and is fundamentally about the preservation of community. Tonight, my colleague, Sandra Email, and I have organized this event to celebrate this classic film. So we'll be presenting a screening of the film, a performance of music from the movie by members of Beausoleil, who contribute to the music to the film, and afterwards a panel discussion, which will feature writer-director Glen Pitre, producer Allan Durand, music arranger Michael Doucet, and music arranger Michael Doucet. Before we begin, I will also say at the end, so after the panel discussion, we are going to have door prizes provided by a very own
Door prizes. Maybe we'll stay like
While they
doors.
play, I'll be passing out tickets. You tear it in half, give half back in the little bag. If it's in the little bag, you might pull your number.
I want that devil.
Before the door prizes, you'll have to stay for after the panel discussion. So that's some really cool stuff.
Okay, sure. I like the podium. Good evening. Yes, my name is Sandy Email. I'm also a library faculty and librarian and archivist with Cajun and Creole Music Collection, which is one of our many special collections, many and varied special collections at the library. Yes, thank you all for joining us. There's such a large crowd here, and I also, want to thank Glen and Allan and all the musicians and Connie. And I have to say, much appreciation to Zach. He worked really hard on this, and he was determined to make it happen, no matter, what.
Rescheduled 17 times.
Something like that, right? And
Yeah, this was originally going to be the 35th anniversary because of
Right.
Delta.
Who's
36.
And I want to thank some other of our co-workers, Tiffany Ellis and Mary Beck, who really helped out. And there's so much work that goes into programming, all that, so to speak, behind the scenes work that it's just incredible. The other thing is happy St. Patrick's Day, right? And of course, we're celebrating our Cajun heritage, but we also we're celebrating our Celtic connections, right? Scotch, Irish, and Irish connections with our Louisiana heritage and cultures. We've pulled some items from our archives and special collections, and we've created two exhibits there for you to look at. And those are items from two of our special collections. One is the Acadiana Manuscripts Collection, and the other is the Cajun and Creole Music Collection. We have many other collections within the library, but those are the two that are most relevant to our event tonight. And also, I'd like to mention that I have an image of an instrument called a waterphone that Billy Ware played in the film soundtrack.
Water waiting scene.
Well, in the swamp scene, right? And then Zach and I visited with Billy last year in we had a chance, he gave us a demonstration, this instrument, bowed instrument, and so we got a try at it, and that was quite a memorable event. I'll never forget that. That was and we're very happy to have members of Beausoleil, of Michael Doucet, and David Doucet on guitar, and Chad Huball on accordion, and Billy on percussion, and Teeth there, and whatever else we brought.
That's it.
That's it, okay. And they're gonna play some songs and music from the very awesome soundtrack, which includes Cajun and Creole music and musicians. Excellent soundtrack. And important to note that it is a soundtrack of both Cajun and Creole songs and music.
And was nominated for a Grammy.
Yes.
Yes, and I was gonna say, well, they really don't need any introductions, but yes, Grammy winning and cultural ambassadors, researchers, composers, recipients of the College of the Arts, Festival of the Arts Spark Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, and they were artists in residence for the Dr. Tommy Como Endowed Chair in Traditional Music. Chad Huball, multi-instrumentalist, member of the Huball Family Band and other bands, and also teaches accordion in the traditional music program, and teaches and in the University 100, it's our freshman year, freshman seminar courses also. So they have played from Carnegie Hall to Oliver Hall. I couldn't pass that up. But, however, Oliver Hall is now a hall of the university, which is now a prestigious R1 university status research, R1 research university. So, Oliver Hall. Well, with that,
Take it away.
Beausoleil and
Well, thank you.
Beausoleil Trio plus one.
Yeah, plus one. Thank you, Sandy and Zach, for putting this on. It's funny, it seems like yesterday, not 35 years ago, but when that happened. So we're just going to play like an overview of some of the songs that we used. I have to say that when it first started, just everybody I knew was going to do the soundtrack to this movie. You know, so they said. So I didn't even think about it. Glenn asked me to do a dance scene, so we do it. I said I can do a dance scene. We did it, and so as the typical combination of Pete and Doucet, Glenn called me on the phone. This is a typical thing. What you doing? Oh, nothing. Want to do the soundtrack? To what? You know, oh, Belizaire. Oh, okay, yeah. When? Tomorrow. And so we worked it out in New York. I guess it was at Armand's apartment, they would say. But anyway, we did that. We got to meet, I got to meet Martin Scorsese, that thing. So it was a kind of an eventual thing. We worked it out, planned it all out, wrote it all out. Glenn met Howard Shore, a great director, a great musical director and musician, to produce it. And Howard was great. He knew how to use a stopwatch, and that's what he did. And we had a great time doing it. Like Sprinky said, yeah, it was nominated for a Grammy. And it also won, I think, the Houston International Festival soundtrack. That's the only certificate I have somewhere. So it did something. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. And David starts off.
Oh, really? With your riff? Oh. Yeah, I got a big solo in this movie.
You should remember his name. How about that? Oh, does it have it on it?
Léger's walls.
Oh, Léger's wall.
Yeah, we worked hard on that.
All right. Just checking. Just checking. Just checking. Just checking.
Always good to double check.
That was all right.
All right. So our next part of the program, really the last part, we have our panel discussion. I'm just going to briefly introduce each of them. So we have, of course, our writer and director, Glen Pitre. He grew up in the Cajun town of Cutoff, Louisiana, and graduated from Harvard University with honors. His low-budget French dialect gumbo westerns broke house records in Bayou country theaters, with American Film Magazine dubbing him the father of Cajun cinema. Best known as writer, producer, and director of big screen dramas, cable thrillers, PBS documentaries, and IMAX films, his movies have played in theaters and on TV worldwide, and has been lauded at festivals such as Sundance and Cannes, and won countless awards, earning him numerous grants, an honorary doctorate, fellowships, and even a knighthood, the Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts de la Lettres. Sorry, I mispronounced it. He's also the founder of Cote Blanche Productions, which produces feature films, documentaries, educational films, radio spots, and much more. Next we have Michael Doucet. He's a singer. He's a singer-songwriter and musician from Scott, Louisiana. He's blended the feel of Cajun fiddling of the past with his own musical inner voice to produce the sound that is uniquely Michael Doucet today. In his career, he has played with nearly every style of fiddling and music in the country, bringing himself and his listeners to a new height in musical enjoyment. In 1976, he joined forces with his brother David, Billy Ware, Errol Verrett, and Tommy Como to form the band Beau Soleil, which we saw parts of earlier today. Yep. The band has incorporated many styles of rhythm and musical forms into their recorded projects, TV, films, and stage shows, yet with a Louisiana touch. The band won Grammy Awards for Best Traditional Folk Album in 1997 and Best Zydeco or Cajun Music Album in 2009. He has received several awards and grants, including a National Heritage Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, a USA Collins Family Foundation Fellowship, and an Honorary Doctorate in Fine Arts from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Next we have Allan Durand. You may have known him as the priest. As a producer-director, Allan Durand's film career consists of producing 5 films, most notably Belizaire the Cajun. He has also written and produced the short film Weekend at Rambouillet, the winner for the short film competition at the 1983 Houston International Film Festival. His screenplay for the documentary Willie Francis Must Die Again won several awards, including the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, 2012 Nicholl Fellowship in Screenwriting, and Best Documentary at multiple film festivals. He has been a visiting professor at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, teaching advanced documentary filmmaking from 2012 to 2013, and served as a member of the Louisiana Film Commission from 1986 to 1988. Finally, we have our moderator for this evening, Professor Conni Castille. Conni Castille is a professor in moving image arts at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. She teaches Introduction to Filmmaking, Documentary Filmmaking, and guides students through senior capstone projects. She has written, directed, and produced several award-winning documentaries on Cajun and Creole culture that have been supported by the Louisiana Division of the Arts and the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. Her hope is that audiences leave with a new point of view, not just about Cajun or Creole culture, but about the power and worth of everyday people doing everyday things. Her films include I Always Do My Collars First from 2007, Raised on Rice and Gravy from 2009, King Crawfish 2010, and T. Gallop, a Louisiana Horse Story from 2012. Now I present to you them.
Well, I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions for the panel. But I'll start with a question first, if that's okay. I was not familiar with your narrative work, Glenn. I was mostly familiar with your documentary work from the research I had done when I prepared to do my own work. So I'm very curious about how you got into the narrative. Was that your first filmmaking, or was it documentary, or?
I couldn't always tell the difference. It was all storytelling, and sometimes you're dealing with facts and actual occurrences and stuff, and sometimes you're staging it. I guess first thing I got on TV was like eight half-hour documentaries. It was my first gig. And then immediately started doing narrative after that, and then going back and forth between.
I know, from the filmmaking process, research is a big part. Even if it's fiction, you still have to make it plausible, right? So what I loved about this film is the way you use, I guess, facts and folk life and the accuracy of all of that, and weave it into a narrative. So you might want to talk about that. I'd like to know about the traiteur background that you were familiar with and how you brought that into the film.
Tell them where you heard it, how you heard it a story the first time.
There was a friend who since passed away named Richard Guidry, and came up to me at some of the films before this were in theater. I think it was playing Abbeville at the time, and he was from Gaydon. And Richard comes up at a party and says, "I got a great idea for a movie."
Which was the 8,000th time.
Yeah, if you do that, if you do what we do for a living, you hear that a lot, and usually it's like you're trying to back away and go get a drink at the party. But it was a great story, and he said it was a great grandfather or whatever, however many grandfathers, Horace Guidry, who had been arrested for the murder of a vigilante, was a musician, was a traiteur, was arrested for the murder of vigilante, eventually released, and then he promptly moved in with the widow. And
Pretty close.
and started researching. That's all we could find, and barely could find that. I mean, it was more family story than fact. Although there was the murder that existed, the vigilante certainly existed. The document the guy reads when they do that first ride is the document they read. They actually read when they were doing it. So that became the seed. But I mean, the traiteur tradition was something I knew about and had, I had a great aunt who used to heal us and stuff. So that was something I grew up with.
So when we see those in the film, those are pretty accurate, like the spider web for the healing.
Oh, yeah.
It's all.
Oh, yeah.
And you did do a documentary, what is it? What ails us?
Good for what ails you.
Good for what
Yeah,
ails you.
yeah, which was a
That's about-
documentary version with several, in fact, several from this area.
Yeah.
As well.
So, Michael, for the music part of it, this was the first time you participated in like scoring a film, if you will?
No, I've been knowing Glenn too long. Like I said, our technique is the day before what you do it. Glenn had this is a long story. I don't know, it was the first one, it was after Fev,
It wasn't
Sean, it was
We
right
tested
after
me,
that.
we tested me as first
We
one
kissed,
we worked on.
yeah. That's how the fiasco started. I love movies. I mean, I've always watched movies. I mean, you just grew up loving movies, and so doing a soundtrack was not a big deal because it's always playing through my head. And Glenn seems to like what I did. I guess because we did enough. In fact, one time we used to record at my late friend's who was in Tommy Como's house. It's the last thing we did, and Glenn said, "Be sure to record enough for my next film."
As long as we're here.
As long as we're here. So yeah, so it was fun, and I have to admit that Howard Shore, I could hear that it's a little bit out, I guess, when he was playing a synthesizer. He was one of the first one with a chord, but he was a producer, and like I said, he did the stopwatch. He did a great job. You can see how tight it is as the movie goes on, and that he was a great help that Glenn met in the elevator, which was great. And he went on to with Lord of the Rings. So I mean, we had some good people working. So
Yeah, definitely.
it was easy.
Yeah.
At that time, I think he was musical director for Saturday Night Live. or-
Yeah.
Yeah, you used to get us free tickets.
Wow. So, Allan, how did you get roped into this?
I moved from New Orleans back here in 1981, and I had written a novel that I wanted to make a movie out of, and I didn't know what to do. And so I get home from the office one day, and there's an article in the Advertiser about a Harvard-educated filmmaker from the Rose Cutoff who had just made a film entirely in French, which had broken the box office record at the Jet Theater in Galliano.
We beat Star Wars. In Galliano.
What did I know? It sounded like so. His name was Glen Pitre, and so I picked up the phone and I called. This is before the internet and all that. I picked up and I called information for La Rose Cutoff and asked for the number for Glen Pitre. And the information operator said, "Well, I'm sorry, it's unlisted." And my wife, Doreen, said, "Well, don't be stupid. He's a big filmmaker. He's not going to have a listed number." And it had his parents' name, so I asked about it. And so they had that number, so I called, and his mother, one of the loveliest people in the entire history of the world, answered. And I said, "Ms. Pete, you don't know me. My name's Allan Durand. I'm a tax lawyer from St. Martinville. Is Glenn there?" And she paused and said, "Oh, man, sure, chef." And I said, "Well, can I talk to him?" So Glenn, the reason his number was unlisted because he still lived at home with his parents. He didn't have it. So I said, "Glenn, I want to make a movie. I don't know how to do it. I just read this article about you. Where do you get a camera? What do you do with the camera?" And some kind of very basic questions. And so he was very polite. And he said, well, did you say you were a tax lawyer? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you know how to do partnerships to raise money and stuff? And I said, oh, I just finished writing a book about it, which was not quite true. And so he said, look, why don't you help? I've got this big budget film, maybe $100,000, and this was going to be, we're going to film it in French. It's called Belizaire's Waltz. We're going to film it, or Acadian Waltz. We're going to film it in French, but then we're also going to film it in English. And if the French one does well, then we'll release the English version. So he said, but look, I'm talking big money.
I forgot that.
Big money is, we talking about like $100,000 on the movie. So we started helping each other, and
What year?
That would have been like
1980,
81,
81, 81, it was 81. And so we made Weekend at Rambouillet, and then started working on Belizaire. And I mean, we weren't getting anywhere. And he called me one day and he said, you ever hear of the Sundance Institute? And I said, nope. And at this time, I was 2 years old. And he said, well, have you ever heard of Robert Redford? I said, oh, yeah. He said, well, he started this nonprofit organization. They take 5 films a year, and you go up to Sundance, and they help you get started, make your movie. And at that time, they had cut it from 500 scripts down to 50, and he was still in the 50. And he said, but don't get excited. I mean, they only pick it 5. And then a month later, they called me, they had cut it down to 25, and we were still in it. I said, oh, Glenn, man, top 25, that's what, don't get upset if you don't make it, because that's still something. And then turns out, when they picked the 5, his script was number 1. So we go up to Sundance, and the great God Redford lays hands on us, and we were holy among them. And that's Robert. The way they did it back then, they give you a crew, and they have professional actors who offer their time, who're familiar with your script, and you come up there and
Practice.
you practice. And Redford says, okay, Glenn, what's going to be your hardest scene? And he says, well, this one. And so I said, let's go shoot it. So Gail Youngs, who was then married to Robert Duvall, was the female they assigned to us to play Alida. And we had brought
Zachary Richard.
Zachary Richard. Zachary Richard was the original cast of Belizaire. And great
Because he spoke
musician.
French and English.
Yeah, and acting. And then, but Armand was up there helping out on one of the other projects. And at the end of the day, everybody gets together in the cabin, you drink beer. And Armand was such a great guy, and we got along so well. Glenn said, I think I'm going to offer him the job. And I said, I think you ought to. And so we came back from there, and well, actually, so this is too long an answer, for which I apologize. But before we went up to Sundance, Glenn calls and he's hemming and hawing, and he said, I did something and I should have asked you, but I said, what? As long as you didn't sign my name to a note, it's okay. And so he said, I had to fill out a bio sheet for the director, which is me, and the writer, which is me, and the producer, which is me. He said, I thought that looked kind of funky. So I put your name down as a producer, and I kind of made up some things about what you had done. And I said, Glenn, you're going to get in trouble. He says, well, you've been helping me. I can't afford to pay you. Come up there. You'll meet Redford. They'll know you're not a producer. They'll send you home after 2 days. But at least you get something out of it. So I was all for it. So we went up there, and a month later, nobody had figured out that I didn't know how to do it. Including me. Well, I knew I didn't know how to do it. But, and so I said, well, what do we do now, genius? And he said, well, let's just keep going, and, we'll work something out. And we just kept going, and 2 years later, we were on the Croisette in Cannes, because Belizaire is the only American film selected to the Cannes Film Festival and the Sundance Film Festival in 1986. And we're putting flyers under the windshield wiping the car to get a good attendance at our screening. And
So what is this, the Riviera? It works in cutoff.
It's like Mark follows
it's
the
kind of
stuff.
winding road, but that's how I end up right here pretending like I'm a producer.
Yeah.
If I can add one more thing.
Let me just say before you do, that movie would have never got finished without this man here. We might have got started, but we'd have never got finished, because he was there every day solving every problem that came up, some of which I still don't know how you did it.
It
But
turns out movie making is not difficult. There's a bunch of million little pieces and they're all simple. The only problem is they gotta go in exactly the right order. But go forward a few years and I decided I'm gonna get back in filmmaking. I'm gonna make a 90-minute documentary for public television. And so I go to the public television station in Houston, the oldest one in the country. And I pitch them and they said, oh, well, that's the Texas Rangers, what a great idea. And I just about hadn't talked to it. They said, what's your experience in television? I said, well, I don't have any experience in television. And they said, oh, boy, what's your experience in film? And I said, well, I produced Belizaire the Cajun, which had been on national PBS, and it was one of the top 2 rated films they ever had on this one program they had. And they said, oh, well, if you did that. And I started to say, boy, if you knew how I actually cut it. But for once I kept my mouth shut.
Well, I'm sure it was a challenge to produce. So, I mean, you have horses, you have guns, you have a period piece. I mean, the production.
Well, we were too young to know what the hell
we
hard it
didn't
Oh, I
was.
know.
we didn't know any better.
Today I tell you it can't be done.
Exactly.
And you'd be right.
And I said, but I mean, when the number of volunteers we had and people loaned us horses, and these guys on the horses, they didn't get paid. That was their horses. They came with their trailers every day, and no matter how late you stayed, it was no problem. And all of those volunteers.
Oh, those cattlemen in Pecan Island who had to cut the ear tags off all their cattle because there were no ear tags in.
And that's a lot of cattle.
And it's a lot of cattle, and some of them didn't want to be handled. You know, and then after we left, they all needed ear tags again. So
I mean, we had so much help from so many people. It was really a community
Yeah.
project.
it was a barn raising. It was.
What about the language? Clearly, you had to make a decision whether it was going to be all French or not. So, what drove that decision?
Robert Redford, once he said,
Yeah,
that was,
Yeah. it
more
was-
marketability, I guess.
Well, as it got to be a bigger film, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, it became impossible, and then the casting got tricky with, getting bilingual actors, and,
Sure.
and it got everybody saying, okay, we'll get them out of Canada, and they go, well, it's not the same French anyway, so it's.
But the sprinkling you have of the French is well done.
Yeah,
And
well, we
good selections.
tried for that.
So, any questions from the audience that you might have for anyone here? Yes.
I was wondering, you were just talking about the horses and the cows. Y'all were definitely in Lake Martin according to the credits. I'm surprised that you didn't have more animal activity than what was shown on screen. Do you know of anything that happened? Maybe a snake popped up, maybe there was
We sent people, beaters through the swamp, hitting on the water, which was the biggest bit of theater ever, because, what's that gonna do? But what it did do is it put the mind at rest of the actors and the crew.
because the crew was all from Los Angeles, they saw that water with all the green stuff on top of it.
Like I said, I've been scanning those slides, and I came across one, and there are, there's me with my straw hat, and there are a couple of camera assistants, and there are 2 camera people with big 35mm ARRI cameras on their shoulder, which probably cost as much as my house does, each one. And they're chest waders, and water's almost to the top of the chest waders. And I'm thinking, man, if the rental house had any clue what we were doing with their gear, they'd have shot us. There was a lot of spiders in the swamp. I know the scene where they're bringing Leger's body back and he stops and he's, he sniffs the guns and everything. The crew dubbed that Chiggerville because about half of them came down with red bug bites.
Yeah, you couldn't get away with that today with Actors Guild and all of that. It'd be crazy.
It was about, golly, it's a while, probably 10 years ago now. I did another movie with Armand Desante, another Western, no doubt, no less, for Lionsgate with Armand Desante, but he wasn't the lead this time. He's like 4 or 5 names down. And we're doing one scene and I had to call him aside and said, look, you're stealing the scene. You can't do that. It's not your scene. You can't steal the scene. He goes, it's the only way I know how to do it. So he hadn't changed a bit.
How was it working with him to get that Cajun accent? Well, for both.
We had him stay with people. They moved in with
Yeah,
locals. I forget who
we
it
spent a lot
was.
of time,
He
and
spent a lot of time.
we kept emphasizing to him, listen to the people around here. Not every word comes out accented. Just pick the these, that, those. But he's good. He's good. That's probably the best answer. Is how he's able to do it.
Well, the directing too. I mean, you really, that Conni Cajun really comes through. His
You-
personality.
You try, but directing a movie is kind of like
Bird and
being the
cats.
governor or the president or something. You're gonna get the credit for stuff that you had no control over, and you're gonna get the blame for stuff that you had no control over. And it's all part of the package. You do the best you can every day, and boy, sometimes the cards fall in your favor, and sometimes things go awry, and it's not even if you can blame a certain person. Just it doesn't. Magic does not happen on that day, and then some days it does. And you hope it does on the important days for the important scenes.
Right.
And
The
just
story
keep
I
going.
really love to tell, as you can tell, is Michael Scheffling, who played Polyte Leger. Just coming off of 16 Candles, was a big star. And we're halfway making through Belizaire, and one day 3 suits show up on the set. And Glen says, and they're talking to Michael, and Michael's upset, and Glen says, what did you do? I said, as far as I know, I didn't do anything. So our hair is getting ready to fall out. We're so worried that we did something and Michael's gonna walk off the set. So finally, after a while, I got Michael by himself and said, Michael, whatever it is, we can fix it. I'm sorry, whatever. And he said, no, that's my agent and 2 lawyers from, one of them's a producer and one of them's, he says, they want me to be in a movie and I don't want to do it. I can't do it. It involves these Navy Top Gun fighters, and they want, and I'd have to be in a jet. And he says, I'm so scared of flying. I'm not that good an actor. I couldn't do it. And he said, they want me to do it. They said whoever does it's gonna be a big star. And so that's how Tom Cruise ended up getting
The one that got away.
Yes.
Stick to the horse.
Some of the scenes were filmed in Acadian Village, but where else did y'all film the village scenes?
The village was all Acadian
all
Village.
Acadian Village.
And so was Ali Does house. Belizaire's house we built out of palmetto, sort of in the back there.
No, Belizaire's house was.
No, the outside, but no, I'm sorry, Perez house.
Yeah.
Belizaire's
Belizaire's
house was in
was
the
the
park in
little-
St. Martinville.
Tourist information thing right inside the main gate of the park in St. Martinville, which of course is where the big plantation home for
That's
what was that?
correct.
Yeah.
We did a
The
lot
Rich America.
right past the airport. We did a lot in we did the swamp scene in Lake Martin. We did the roundup scene in Pecan
Well,
Island.
what, the horses running through the water to catch Leger, that wasn't that Lake Martin.
No, that was right near the airport. I'm sure it's all built up. It's probably a shopping center
Okay,
now.
right off the Lake Martin Road, that's where that was.
Yeah. And there was an old theater that had closed down. Randy,
The Joy Theater.
Where's the
The
Nona?
Nona.
The
The
Nona.
Nona, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But, by
that's
the way,
where the jail was.
we talk about the look of the thing and how good it looked. You know, you got a whole crew that does the art department. As we call it, the art department. And head of the art department is called the production designer, and we have the production designer sitting
Standing
right there in the
Right.
green shirt. So, you know, if you look at it and, you know, again, there were a lot of hands on deck, but, I'll never forget, I called Randy one night and said, "Oh, we're changing the script a bit, we're changing the ending." He goes, "Okay." I said, "Can you build me a gallows?" There was like a silence on the phone for about 5 seconds. He goes, "Yeah, if I can find a cypress."
The way that came about was 2 weeks before we were ready to start filming, Glenn gets a call from Armand and says, because the original script, which is how the priest got in, the original script was when Belizaire's in jail and he's negotiating with Willoughby and the sheriff, he negotiates his way out of jail. And that was gonna be the ending. And Armand calls Glenn and says, you know, it really needs a bigger ending. It just needs a big finish. And Glenn says, well, you know, I really like the finish, and Redford likes the finish, and Robert Duvall likes the finish. And he said, I just need to, and Glenn said, well, come on down, we'll work on it, and we'll work something out. And he says, no, come up with a big finish, and then I'll come down. So, how Glenn didn't kill him over that. But anyway, so Glenn comes up with the big finish. Now, the reason the priest, the opening scene gets in there where he's negotiating in confession is before we had the big finish, I told Glenn, I said, my favorite go-to film is Casablanca. And Casablanca starts out with the Major Strasser gets off the plane and Captain Renault says, due to the importance of your visit, we rounded up twice the usual number of suspects. And that's why the line at the end when Rick shoots Captain Major Strasser and Renault says, turns to the cops and says, round up the usual suspects, that's where the line works. It wouldn't have been nearly as effective if that's the first time you heard it. So I told Glenn, he's got to do some kind of negotiation. Belizaire's got to do some kind of negotiation early on to show himself as a master negotiator. And it came up with this scene where he negotiates with the penance, which you really didn't need anymore once you got the big scene in at the end. But it's just, it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah. Anybody else? Questions? Oh, go ahead.
The Fate of O was one of the largest scenes in the movie. How many nights did y'all spend getting all that, and was Michael a diva that night?
I just remember one hell of a long night.
It was one night. No, it was one night.
One night.
All the inside the room was one night.
One night.
One night. No, we were moving fast because we had to. We had what, 36 days.
We started April
36 days.
15th and finished July 1st and took Sundays off. So that's, oh,
You had a question?
Was there ever any pressure to do a sequel? Because there is, I'm admitting some now.
Yeah, you know, people have brought that up.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of. There's lots of
You
stories.
better
to
put in,
tell.
everybody put in your,
There are lots of stories out there to
keep
tell.
it, keep your loved ones from doing it then for 75 years, because otherwise as soon as, somebody's gonna come along.
well, we kind of go on the Hank Williams method for that. If you got the money, honey, we got the time.
You have the time. I don't have it.
Well, we're hard.
I'm not going back to that one.
Anybody else?
Did you ever make the film from your novel?
I made a 30-minute short about that takes place during World War II. First part of it takes place at LSU. The second part of it takes place on the outskirts of Paris, right before the liberation of Paris. So I made the part at LSU. made a short film. It,
Where can we see it?
it's on 16mm film, so I don't, I have it.
It's at your house.
It's at my house.
We'll get it digitized for you. Yeah, it's time, it's time.
It's, I don't know if I let anybody see it. My technique improved.
You get mixed feelings on your early work, don't you? You're learning as you go.
Yeah.
Each one is, and this, I'm sitting, and I think this movie's kind of held up, but there's still, there's still moments where, boy, if I'd only done, I should have combined those scenes into one, and I should have done, this should be a little shorter, or, I should have made him wait before he delivered that line, so you're redirecting it in your head, which of course is impossible. I mean, it's there, it's done.
No, we ended up getting distributed by Scurus Pictures, which was a company started by the grandson of the guy who ran Paramount during the Golden Age. And to show you how hard it is to get a film distributed, I don't know if 2019 or 2020 was the last, before COVID, the last Sundance Film Festival. But to submit your film to Sundance, it has to have been finished within the previous 12 months. You got a 2-year-old film, it has to be finished in the previous 12 months. And the last time they had a full festival 2 years ago, there were 11,700 entries for
100 slots, 80 slots.
well, that includes the documentaries.
Yeah, it's true.
And the short film. So for maybe 25 feature films. Now, all of those won't, in the Sundance Film Festival, all of those won't get distributed.
No, maybe 5, 6.
Yeah, I mean, to get an independent film made and get distribution is, it's not.
We got lucky. We got very lucky.
Oh my goodness,
That would be Netflix. Huh?
It'd be Netflix now.
It'd be Netflix.
well, Netflix is, well. that's-
Maybe it'd be Netflix.
Netflix is hard to do business.
Yeah.
But,
You
I
got
appreciate
the-
y'all taking a night out to come
No, but
visit
they're
with us and
Yeah.
see this film, and, yes, sir.
For laughs, did Armand actually know how to milk a cow?
What,
Or
if
did
it-
you have to rig it with a hose?
No, they learn.
They
They learn.
learned,
Some
okay.
learn better
That
than
was
others.
real.
Some learn better than others, but the thing I found, I didn't know then, but I certainly know now and learned the hard way, is when you're casting a film and you're choosing actors, and sometimes if they're playing a detective, they have to be good with a gun. If you're doing a Western, they have to be good on a horse. And you ask an actor, can you do this? And the answer is always, oh yeah, oh yeah. And then you find out, we did one picture where the woman spent, half the movie driving, buddy pictures, 2 women, 2 French war brides in America right after the war. And she spends half the picture driving this Model A. So thank goodness we'd lined up a trainer to teach her how to drive Model A, 'cause it's a little bit different, right? Well, this actress from Paris had never learned to drive at all. I mean, not at all. Had she told anybody that? I mean, we never thought to ask. You assume, she's read the script, you assume that she would mention that kind of omission, but no, it gets there, it's like, oh yeah, I really can't drive. Was your license taken away? Oh, I never had a license. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the original ending?
The scene that happens when they're bargaining for the horse and the mule and the cow went on longer. And again, it started with the 3 critters and then eventually became a negotiation, and I forget exactly how this.
I mean, he talked his way out of jail, it
That-
worked.
This is, this is a better ending.
It
This is a better ending.
Yeah, this
You
is
know.
a Hollywood ending.
And also fit in.
To make a movie, you need a Hollywood ending.
They also fit in with the Hollywood ending, yes, but also, as Connie was saying, you know, it's the trickster. I mean, it's such a character in Louisiana folklore. We wanted a character who would embody that. And the way, you know, when it seems like there's no way out, the noose is literally around his neck, he has to trick his way out, which he found.
But as an actor, he really came out, that's his strongest part in the movie, is on the gallows.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it really comes out that you believe it.
I was convinced I was gonna put him on the A-list, and he was gonna be a huge star. Well, after this one, that's when he got the lead role in Mambo Kings, which was a big Warner Brothers film.
And launched Antonio Banderas.
Oops. Yeah, they
Let's talk about seeing.
I happened to be in New York, and I visited Armand on the set when they were making it. I said, well, who else is in it? He said, well, it's this Spanish kid. He doesn't speak a word of English. And everything you ask him, he says, you bet. And he said, he's such a nice guy. He said, but I don't know where you go from here.
Did the folks at Sundance understand that Texas little jab throughout the film?
Yeah, we didn't get any flack
Didn't
on
get
that.
any flack, no.
We didn't get any flack on the fact that you get exiled to Texas.
Texas.
I'm unclear, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'll let George go and then we'll come back.
Connie, I have one quick memory,
None of our producers, by the way.
Yeah.
and that was when we went to Sundance to preview or screen the film. And one of the three of you, we were staying in Park City, Utah, Deer Valley, a condo. Somebody came up with a brilliant idea, let's do a dodo and feed everybody who comes to the screen. We wanted to get a biggest crowd as we could. And everybody said, okay, let's do it. And Sprinky said, George, go into town and get as much chicken and Charisse sausage as you can find. And he said, if they don't have Charisse, get andouille. At Park City, Utah. So I spent about 2.5 hours in Park City, Utah. Well, I bought as much chicken as I could, but try to find andouille in Park City, Utah. Well, I came back with 25 pounds of Polish kielbasa.
That's right, that's right.
It did work.
It's a damn good thing we had our own hot sauce.
The dark roux that Sprinky made, it was one of the best gumbos those Hollywood people had ever eaten.
We had about 300 people show up. It was
Absolutely.
and Michael played, and it was wonderful. I was sure we were gonna win
But
that.
they had
game.
already voted.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful night.
We should have won.
We did win, you kids were here.
I wanted to ask you how, I was unclear how Belizaire ended up wealthy at the end.
Well, you got that horse, the mule, and the cow.
In the negotiations from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the widow.
But
We'll see.
he didn't have the widow at the time, did he, right at the end?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much won off with that.
She said maybe.
She said, we'll see.
We'll see, that's a good seed.
We'll see. You know, there was a written script, but I mean, as we're going, things are getting invented, things are being made up, and Armand often would like decide the line in the script wasn't good enough, so he'd go ask my dad, who was playing the sheriff, how it should really be said. Of course, my father was never gonna deny a challenge like that and would always come up with something. And often it was better than what I'd written, so yeah. I remember this one, I tied his wounds. I tied his wounds. Yeah, which I
Any
love.
other family members in the film?
My mom, you see,
I thought your mom was, yeah.
huh?
I saw her name on the credits.
She's behind you in that opening scene in the church.
Okay.
She's next to Gail in the funeral. She doesn't have any lines. But the killer was my little brother, who was in Harvard Law School. but wants to be in the movie, is gonna fly down on his own nickel, because we certainly didn't have that in the budget. And grew the worst, most scraggliest beard in the world, so he'd fit in and everything. And just had this brief thing where he drives up in the buggy at the dance and goes in. And he did fine, but you're cutting the movie, and you know you got to keep up the pace, and it really didn't add to the story, and it took. I mean, it probably only took 30 seconds, but it's, 30 seconds is precious, and I cut him out. And I felt so bad at the time, and worse after he realized it was being cut out. And he still teases me about that. That and the fact that Michael's brother David is credited in the credits as Sonny Landreth. Which, it was very unfortunate.
Sonny might have played on that.
I think
I
Sonny
know
was
David
gonna
did.
play, but didn't because we got David instead. I forget how it happened, but I mean those things, those things happen.
Makes you feel good, still makes you feel good, good job.
Go ahead.
I had a question, only based on the fact that about 15 years ago, my daughter, who was that tall, was in a movie, and so I was on the set, and I was so impressed with that particular movie, because it was only one of two that she was in, where the props manager had all of these notes and notes and notes and notes about where everything went. And it was just amazing to me, but it taught me to be very, very critical of watching a movie for those little things.
You caught a couple of things in here?
Yeah. The one I wanted to ask you about though is where
Dishes on.
Olive does drying the dishes. Yeah. And then she's already finished. And they're back again. I thought maybe I could misinterpret it.
At the end of the day, you generally edit for performance and figure people are they're either caught up in those characters or they're not.
I didn't used to be that critical.
Yeah, no, but and I swear, 40 years of making movies, I've never been in an editing room where at least once somebody says, well, if that bothers them, we've lost them anyway. I mean, because you have to go with what most important is, and then sometimes you're screwed. You realize I didn't get this shot, and it's just never gonna quite work, but you're not going back. So yeah, I mean, and trust me, you saw flaws. There are lots you didn't see. There's lots of stuff. It's an imperfect process.
But the film critic for the San Francisco Examiner did compare the script to Shakespeare, so.
I don't know what that guy was smoking.
Which Shakespeare?
Huh?
Which one?
The good one.
Yeah, no, we got some very good reviews
That's
on
like
this thing. Some not so good, but we got mostly great reviews on this thing. But every now and then there'd be an outlier, and I remember the Detroit Free Press, the big paper in Detroit, reviewed the movie and gave it like half a page, which is a lot for a movie review, right? Except it was, I mean, the guy must have just found religion or something, because the whole review is comparing Belizaire to the Christ figure, especially with like the gallows scene with the two thieves and stuff. Which I read it, because the publicist sent you the stuff, and I read it and I go, well, this kind of makes sense. But I mean, you know why there's two instead of one? Because we're shooting widescreen, and if there was only one, the star would have been off to the side the whole time. So you put one on either side of him, so he's in the middle. But it's like, yeah, maybe it was floating around in the subconscious. Maybe, I mean, who knows where all this stuff comes from.
But we agree on the biggest mistake we made. One of the vigilantes.
Besides him?
No.
That's too late.
One of the vigilantes was also our special effects guy who did the guns and the blood and the stuff. And this name's not gonna mean anything to to all of you probably. He lived next door to a guy named Vincent Canby, who was the chief film editor for the New York Times.
Critic, chief critic.
Chief film critic. And this guy, there is nobody today who has the preeminence or Vincent Canby. If Vincent Canby saw your movie and liked it, and he liked independent films, if he saw your movie and liked it, you were guaranteed success. He saw a film, he wrote a glowing review of a film called Room with a View, which played 54 weeks in New York in the same theater based on. And this guy lived next to Vincent Canby growing up. And he says, do you want me to go ask Mr. Vince if he'll review the film? He says, you know, he's not gonna do anything special, but I can get him to review instead of the number 2 and number 3 guy over there. And we asked our distributor, or we asked some knucklehead who talked us out of it, and so, but, because Vincent Canby would have liked this film. And, oh man, if we could go back and change one thing.
But, by the way, the guy whose father grew up next to Vincent Canby, who was the stunt coordinator, had never done stunts for a movie. No, I mean, he's you know, he'd read a lot, and he's learning. But he came to it because he figured he had broken too many bones in his previous profession. So he's becoming a stuntman, right? Because it's easier. I said, well, what's your previous profession? He goes, well, the last 8 years, I've been touring Renaissance Festival to Renaissance Festival. I do the jousting. Oh, you can do fine.
Okay, last question, anybody? No?
I know, I got the last question.
Yes, let's.
I got
let's
the
do
last,
that.
4 questions. Okay.
Who wants?
Who wants it? Who gets it? A 751 and a 756.
This is gonna, I can't hide my glasses on. I
Okay.
have to reassure this.
Posters are going. We got hot sauce and DVDs.
751.
751. All right. Here's
One more, Frankie, you want this one?
And
The left.
800.
Or 778.
That's good enough.
That's close enough.
Wait, didn't you get one already? Hey, double dipping.
You double dipping.
Wait, we got somebody coming.
Oh, hot digging.
We have DVDs and hot sauce.
Okay, my sons are saying hot sauce.
Shake it really well. That was bottled by Cajun Chef in St. Martinville, so it was really good stuff. 30.
It's ready here to get finished now.
Yeah.
Well, Connie, thank you for being the moderator. Zach, thank you for.
Give another round of applause for all.